Great. So welcome everyone to the Collaboration for Healthier Lives Employee Expert Series. This is the fourth in our series, so you're very, very welcome. As we're a global organization, this session is being recorded, as many of you who will be listening to this session will be after it's actually happened live. So a warm welcome to everyone who's here with us in the virtual room today or is listening to this following today's session. So just as a quick overview before we get into the meat of our agenda. So I'm Sharon and I lead the Healthier Lives agenda here at the Consumer Goods Forum, and everything we're trying to do is with our 400 members in 70 countries to empower people to lead healthier lives and create shared value for all of you that we work with around the globe. And we do that through a number of avenues and a number of vehicles, through stores, communities where our members operate, in digital ecosystems where more and more people are consuming around the globe, and of course, at the core of our agenda and everything we do is with our own people. And I think in particular with the global pandemic and everything we've seen evolving over the last over 18 months now, the health and the well-being of everyone working in the consumer goods industry has really been put to the forefront of our agenda, and which is why I was thrilled that our employee working group really wanted to focus and zoom in on an expert series on well-being. As the coalition is signed by 38 CEOs, and the companies that you can see here on your screen have agreed to implement our Charter of Action. And as I mentioned, we implement it through three ways: through our own people, in stores and communities around the world, and in digital environments. The employee work stream has clustered and prioritized their work into the three areas that you can see here on the screen. Of course, in times of COVID, health and safety of everyone working in distribution centers, factories, stores, offices around the globe really was front and center of what we did, and sharing best practices and learnings from retailers, manufacturers and their partners around the globe was something that we really focused in on in 2020. At Workforce Nutrition, we have an entire alliance with GAIN, the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition, where we look at healthy food at work, nutrition education, health checks and breastfeeding support for workers all over the globe. And well-being. This was an area where, of course, we've seen the rise of well-being on the top of agendas around the globe, with a particular focus on mental health and well-being, and really the efforts to understand the impact of all of the activities and programs that we have in this space, to see if we could raise standards, if we could break down some of the stigmas that are in this space, and how we, the CGF, could help our members to track progress in this area. So we started this employee well-being series. We've had a number of our members. We started with Danone and Grupo Bimbo, Johnson & Johnson and Ahold Delhaize, sharing their insights and how they have catalyzed action around well-being for their own people. And today I'm thrilled to be joined by three experts who are driving this at Barilla, supported by Wisdom Works, and the transformational journey that they are on to really drive this for themselves, for their team, for their own people, but also for their brands. And I think this is going to be a really interesting session for all of you listening in live or listening to this afterwards. So I really would encourage you to ask questions. We have a great panel that are here with us today. So a very warm welcome to Julia, Renee and Diane, who are going to be with us for the next hour. So please do make the most of the time that you have with them. Be thinking of the questions as we work through the presentation today. And please don't hesitate to either use the Q&A, type something into the chat, just let us know how you want to interact. We are absolutely all ears. We're in good company, I think, on the session today. So please do take this opportunity. If we don't get to your questions, I promise you a reply via email or drop me a note on hw@theconsumergoodsforum.com, and we will follow up. So with that, I will hand you over to the experts. I'll stop sharing my screen and hand you over to the experts to get into the agenda and everything you want to hear about the transformational journey.
Thank you, Sharon, for this introduction. Thank you for having us, and hello, everybody. Thanks for being with us today. Okay, so quickly 2 words to present myself. I'm Julia Schwörer. I'm a German but happily living in Italy, mother of 2 little girls, a passionate traveler, at least in normal times. Hope to get back traveling soon. And concerning my career, I have spent the 20 years of my marketing experience in basically in 2 companies, in L'Oreal, and now I'm in Barilla, where I'm very happy to be in charge of one of the most beautiful brands, I think, in Italy, which is Mulino Bianco. In Mulino Bianco, which is the Italian bakery leader, acting in many categories and an iconic brand since its foundation in '75. We have a dream in Mulino Bianco, and it's to nurture the trust that the world can be a better place. And you might think this is very ambitious for a food brand. We actually don't think it's too ambitious because we believe that we can contribute to make the world a better place, offering people the joy of food that is really well made. And when we say well made, what do we mean by that? We mean, of course, tasty products, but we also believe that an obsession on quality is absolutely a must to offer well-made food. We believe in the sustainability of our sourcing, in the sourcing of our ingredients. We have an attention on nutritional aspects, and we also insist a lot on the transparency of our communication with consumers. Trust and a positive outlook have been keywords in the success story of Mulino Bianco since it has been born. And I think it's one of the reasons why it is still today such a big love brand and so relevant to people. And we strongly communicate both products, but a lot also our values through iconic campaigns. I brought you one here, and I hope that this is really working now. What I want to show you is our latest brand manifesto film, which we launched last year, just to give you a bit of a flavor of what the brand is all about for who. I see there are lots of non-Italians connected, so maybe you're not so familiar with the brand.
Is that working? Thank you. Back to you, Julia.
Okay, thank you. So we had just finished the shooting for this campaign in February last year when COVID hit Italy and changed our lives radically. Personally, like everybody else, I just go back to the presentation, sorry. Okay, like everybody else, I very quickly felt the consequences of the lockdown. Smart working with 2 little kids, understanding what to cook today, how to grant the attention to the kids, and how to get a job running, keep a job running, and with the same energy that I had always developed for it. And at the same time, I felt the impacts on the team because it was like seeing that all ways of working and conventional methods weren't applicable anymore, as if team dynamics were paralyzed. I saw people really in difficulties because they were very worried for themselves, for their loved ones, and especially the young members of the team. They didn't even know everybody physically. Some joined us in the last month, and some of them were sitting in a flat in a city that was not their city, and without even the smallest possibility to connect for a drink or whatever, so feeling alone. And I really felt overwhelmed by the responsibility And it somehow went beyond also the professional aspects, because it all became very blurred, because you saw these people as humans in the first place, and then we were a team in a company at the same time. So I really felt that that I somehow needed help. And then came the brand aspect. Mulino Bianco has become such a loved brand and such a relevant brand, because in the critical situations of the country, in the crisis moments, it was able to reinvent itself, to reestablish itself, to actualize itself. But now COVID was so different. It was so much more violent, and it was a kind of crisis that we had never met before. And so my question was really, how can a brand like Mulino Bianco remain meaningful in this new context? And this is when I actually started to talk to Wisdom Works and to Renee and Diane, and to develop this idea of a well-being journey that we will explain you a little more in detail now.
So I am Renee Moorfield, and I'm CEO of Wisdom Works, and I'll introduce Diane, who is my sidekick in Wisdom Works and is been my kind of co-conspirator in this journey with Julia. It's been actually a gift to work with Melina Bianco and the team, as particularly in this situation. I mean, all of us have experienced this is COVID. The pandemic is one of the first times, I think, in the history of our planet that we are collectively going through an experience all at the same time. And when Julia reached out and said, can we create something that supports the team in looking at addressing their own well-being, really exploring that and what they could do during this very challenging time to enhance their well-being, but also connect the team through these conversations about well-being. Because remember, the team, like all of your teams, the team had come from working together and seeing each other. And think about all the interstitial tissue that happens when we're in the same space, when we can meet each other for a coffee, we can have a conversation at the copy machine. Now none of that is happening anymore, so we're all remote. So how can we use a focus of well-being to support connections and bonds with the team? But then also, how can we use this conversation about well-being to relook at the brand, the manifesto, the purpose of the brand, and look at it maybe in whole new ways? How can the brand be a renewed invitation to the well-being of consumers, particularly now? In this time, because of all the challenges we're experiencing. So we worked with Julia and her brand equity manager, Andrea DePass, to develop a 5-month journey with these 3 outcomes. So the first being to understand the dimensions of well-being to grow personally. So let's start with, each person on this team first. And that matters. Starting with ourselves first is what matters, because out of working on our own well-being comes all the decisions about the team and the brand. So starting with us first. Second outcome was to use the well-being principles and practices to build a cohesive team. And we'll talk again about how that played out. And then the third was, what would it mean to create a well-being manifesto for the brand itself? Again, to support the brand being an even stronger invitation. As Julia said, this is a beloved brand across Europe and especially in Italy. How can we use that love and the consumers feel it in an even stronger way? So we can go to the next slide. And Diane, please do add anything you want to pile on here. Please add as we go through this.
Yeah, I was just going to say it was so important for everyone to sort of experience well-being for themselves, to really have this personal lens of well-being, like what does it mean to me, and to really sort of practice and experiment with new ways of thinking about it as a whole human being, not just about work, but just really integrate it into, because that's kind of what COVID did. We were all living at home and working at home, and everything was integrated. And that, I think that was the lens that we looked at it for them individually.
Yeah, and there was a core framework that we brought to the conversation. So tiny little bit of history. Wisdom Works is a 22-year-old company, and our focus has always been how do we help leaders create the capabilities that and create the conditions where people can thrive. So our whole focus, our whole sweet spot, has been helping leaders create workplaces, brands, and capabilities within themselves to support, to activate, and amplify human thriving. And for many years, we did that work with organizations, global companies around the world. Around 2014, we brought our insights together in some core curriculum for leaders, and we called that Be Well, Lead Well. So that brand meant something. It was not just about being well, it's about leading in a way that advances well-being. It's not just about leading well, it's also about what Diane just said, it's about living it from the inside out. And at that time, we used a qualitative assessment, a holistic well-being assessment, to do that work with leaders. But in about 2018, we decided to work with the University of Colorado in Colorado Springs, the Positive Organization Center in the business school there, to bring all the insights we had collected over a couple of decades and create a science-backed well-being framework. And this is what you're seeing here. So this is called Be Well, Lead Well Pulse. And the tool is for two purposes only. It's for building awareness, and it's also for development, for the evolution of ourselves as human beings, of teams, and in this particular case, with Julia's team, to relook at the brand in a new way. There's 6 dimensions in this, and I won't go through a bunch of details about what's in this, but to let you know that this was the core framework we used throughout the journey that we developed for Julia's team. 6 dimensions, all centered around the first dimension, which is thriving. What does it mean to thrive? And there are 19 psychometrics underneath these 6 dimensions that then feed these dimensions. So if thriving's in the center, we also talk about fuel. How do we consciously use how we eat, how we move, how we rest, how we breathe to help us manage our stress, our energy, and performance? So this tool in particular doesn't prescribe what to do. It helps people become more aware of their inner resourcefulness to thrive, and to create the personalized practices that are going to help them cultivate thriving within their own lives, their relationships, and the team. So fuel is about eating, moving, resting, breathing. You'll see that at 6 o'clock, wonder is all about appreciation and awe. It's about learning and growing. It's about seeking new perspectives, points of view outside of your own. It's about challenging yourself. Flow then gets into engagement at work and a sense of self-esteem at work. And then wisdom is looking at, do I have a clear vision and purpose to really guide my life and work, among other factors. I'm gonna stop here for just 1 second, because what we have noticed in all the organizations we're working with, but in this situation as well, is the sense in this pandemic of how people have felt like they are languishing. There was a recent New York Times article that talked about languishing and feeling this sense of being undirected and unmoored. Like, I've got my head down and I'm working hard, but I'm starting to ask, why am I doing this? What is this all about? And is this how I want to use my life energy? And so this tool, is particularly the wisdom area, begins to support someone in really asking those deeper questions. So unlike some wellness tools that look at specific wellness behaviors, lifestyle behaviors, this broadens it to a deeper conversation about psychological well-being. And then the last dimension is that gold ring you see on the outer side of this model called Thriving Amplified, basically based on the core assumption, when we support the thriving of others, we gain. It is absolutely an altruistic act to support others. It's also in some ways self-centered in the most positive way, because we gain personally when we support the thriving of others. So this was the core framework we used throughout the journey of supporting the outcomes that we just showed you of evolving self, team, and brand for Melina Bianco. Now here is the journey itself over the 5 months. And I know these are some small words here on the screen. This violates every rule of appropriate slide building. So I think the Consumer Goods Forum is going to turn this into a deck that if anyone wants it, they're willing to have it. Over the 5 months, starting with November and ending just recently. So you're hearing this journey hot off the presses because we just finished at the end of March and got some feedback from the journey that we'll be able to share with you. But you can see through this journey, starting from step 1 to step 9, that a few things were happening. One, as Diane mentioned, we were starting with it's important for people to start with themselves. So it was all about everyone taking the Be Well, Lead Well Pulse assessment, which has 133 questions in it that then roll up into these 19 psychometrics and those 6 dimensions that you saw in the framework. Getting a debrief of their assessment results, a confidential debrief, and in particular, a thread throughout this was creating a safe space for people to explore their own well-being, knowing that that space was confidential and that they could I'll take a step back and say, underlying all of this is the principle, human beings are not problems to be fixed. Human beings are not problems to be fixed. This was a journey to support people in their own self-exploration. And so creating that kind of safe space to do that exploration was really important. Everyone also got a coaching session. And then throughout these 9 steps, there were group sessions that punctuated where the group came together to talk about issues of personal well-being, talk about how to support each other as a team and make some decisions about the team. And Julia's going to be sharing what they decided on that. And then by the end of this journey, when we got to about February, we started talking about the brand. Okay, you've now learned lots of insights from your personal, diving deep into the questions of your own well-being. You've also talked about how to support each other. Now that you understand more about that journey and the science of well-being, these science-based factors of well-being, how might you apply them to the brand? And so we had this incredible conversation about the brand. In fact, I think we could have had a step 10 and 11. We could have gone farther even with the brand journey because there was so much richness there. And what I'll say about that before we change the slide is you have to remember, although Julia's team, everyone is on the Melina Bianco brand, not everyone is doing officially brand work. There's all sorts of functions on that team. So I saw this as an incredible developmental opportunity as well for everyone to understand the brand in a completely new way, even if that wasn't their normal job. So that was an unexpected side benefit for this whole journey together. Diane, anything you want to add to that, the journey piece?
No, only that I think we looked at this in a way that first started with the individual and then went to the team. But the brand, we always felt, because Melina Bianco had such a strong heritage and tradition in this area, that it was ripe for real connections and to make well-being, to have the opportunity for the brand to broaden that impact to its consumers. So I think that we really, that was kind of always the end game, as well as the other 2 aspects to it.
Now, in between all of those steps, so on that last slide, you saw those dots underneath, and all those dots represented all of these integration activities. So our, as a company, from the get-go for WisdomWorks, and I feel now confident that I could say this about Julia as well, now that we've worked together for a long time, but our interest is not to just inspire, and it's not to just create events. Our interest is to support the evolution of consciousness and capability for healthier, more sustainable, more effective ways of leading in the world. And that means leading our lives, that means leading our companies, that means leading our brands. So that means leading our cultures at work. So we're interested in embodiment. How do we take new insights that we get as a human being, whether it's for ourselves, our team, or our brand, and turn them into new habits and routines that help us show up better for each other, whether that each other is on a team or whether that each other is the consumers we're supporting. So we had integration activities happening all through this 5-month journey. This is just a short list of them. I believe there was actually more, but these are the buckets of lists. I would say that the team was probably feeling like, wow, this was an intense journey, because remember, this was I don't want to say it was on top of their jobs, because it actually, I think with Julia's support, became part of this is the work that we're doing together, and it was integrated in that way as well. But at the self level, you'll see there were a number of self-awareness and reflection exercises, mindfulness practices, and conscious breath practices that the team was learning all along the way. Connections with nature. I mean, honestly, not just with this team, but with most all of us, with this lockdown in the world, my sense has been, when I look across companies, there's also been a very much an emotional lockdown. We've been at our computers, at our desk, at Zoom, and we just continue to work. And so getting people out back in touch with nature, which is so life-giving. So there were practices for that. Everyone created their own personal well-being manifesto. So that was for two reasons. One, that sense of what those quite deeper questions that I mentioned before. What is my vision and purpose for life and work? What are my values, and how do I want to design my life? This pandemic has been a wonderful opportunity. It's been difficult, but it's been a wonderful opportunity also to ask the deeper questions and start to reset and reprioritize how we want to live. And so having that personal well-being manifesto was important, but it also was a great practice for then later on creating a brand well-being manifesto and starting that. At the team level, the team, based on their group feedback from the Be Well, Lead Well Pulse assessment, they were engaging in appreciative practices, so practices for appreciating one another more consciously and intentionally, instead of every time we get together, we're just going to work. No, let's stop. And based on the principle of relationship before work, let's really care for the relationship here. Because again, we're missing all that interstitial time that we used to have together. So let's make sure we care for that. Deeper listening skills, and then various well-being practices that they integrated into their team routines. And then at the brand level, we dove into some of the latest consumer research about wellness and brands. The team did a heat map of their brand based on the Wellbeing framework, the Be Well, Lead Well Pulse framework that you've seen. They also began to create a Wellbeing manifesto for the brand and some ideas for activating the brand in whole new ways for consumer well-being and consumer impact. So it was, as you can see, rich. Rich is one word, intense is another. It was a very transformative journey for all of those who decided, I am diving fully in. And I have to say, we get an opportunity as a company, because this is the work we do, to work with lots of different teams. This was a gift. This was a gift for a couple reasons for us. Number one, we're also in the middle of the pandemic, and doing meaningful work like this is so life enhancing, and just fueled me personally, and I know Diane as well. But also this team that Julia has put together dove in. There was a highly engaged group of people. They all really dove in. And then Julia was just a role model as a champion and someone who was on the well-being journey herself. So those are key things that made this work.
Yeah, and I think there is...
I was just going to say that one of the things that we noticed is in the beginning when we started, there was this feeling of, everybody was kind of contracted, and just bound up, and this, as we went through this journey for all of us, including myself and Renee, when we went through, there was this expansiveness seemed to open up, and the innovation and new ideas, and you could just feel that energy throughout.
Yeah, I think there was one factor that helped a lot, because it might sound all very theoretical and serious and intense. It was intense, but I think the fun factor really helped, because it was really incredible to see how all these list of objectives and activities turned into creativity, into connection during our sessions. We had lots of different kinds of sessions. We had lots of homework to do also individually, but especially in the team sessions, it was really enriching to see people meet who normally don't meet a lot, especially now, of course, but even in the normal times, not everyone works with everyone in the team closely. So people discovered each other's. We discovered the brand, looking at it with a new lens. Basically, the heat map that you see here with the different colors in the middle of the chart was just a way to understand where the well-being sweet spots of the brand lie, and many of them are already present. Basically, you saw the film that we showed you in the beginning about the little happiness moments. I mean, that was already developed before this journey, but it seems so spot on, right? Because it's all about the wonder part of well-being, and we also discovered that there are some pieces of or some dimensions of well-being that actually are anchored in the brand, but that we maybe have not nurtured anymore in the last years. For example, cultivating care in others. And so the journey also incentivized ourselves to put even more energy and to put projects in place that maybe were already on our desks, but it gave it even more fuel. And there's one example, which is the Abbracci activation, which I would love to show you, because it's just I think a perfect expression of how well-being in a brand can really come to life. Yeah, let's go.
Distant.
I never
get
thought
together
I
with
could
this.
help doing a program with
Definitely. Such an amazing initiative.
I'm grateful for this.
We can finally give
I really like Abbracci.
now
We can
do so much with a small gesture.
This was in the middle, it was in December, January, February, let's say. So it was in the middle of our well-being journey, and you can understand how it just was perfect timing for such a project. But it was not the only idea. We generated so many more concerning products, but also concerning the brand. Some of them are still on paper now. Some of them are already in the, let's say, in the in a first phase of realization, but I really want to underline how rich and how stimulating this whole journey was. And as Renee said before, it's not finished because we think we still need to work on the brand part. There was so many ideas popping up, and we have not finalized the work. Basically, we still have to do that. Now, what about feedback? How did people react to the journey? We led a survey when we when we finished the journey in March, and with really encouraging numbers, because 82% of team members said that the journey was actually a good or excellent investment for personal, team, and brand development. And the interesting thing, reading through the qualitative comments and so, was that especially the integration of the three levels, the me, the team, and also the brand, have really been appreciated, because people talked about virtuous circle, about reflections that on one level maybe start to create reflections on the other level. So it all gets together like pieces of a big puzzle. And it also nurtured the idea of going even beyond our team. Many of my team asked me, but what is now happening next? Is this going to have any impact on the company? Is anyone else doing this kind of journey? So it was really the contagiousness, let's say, of well-being that has been felt, and personally I felt it a lot too. And really the link between all levels. It's not like I'm a private person and that's one thing, and then I go to work and it's not, I mean, it's all linked. And I also think that a strong brand is just the people behind it, you know. It's I think it's all strongly linked. We have established also some next steps. Of course, on the individual level, everyone has developed his or her personal well-being manifesto and let's say plan. And it's interesting to see how there's really an individual approach to it. Some discovered the power of breathing. Some are following some yoga routines, some are more working on the gratitude muscle. So everyone has found a personal entry point and a sweet spot. And that's fine like this, I think. While on the team side, we have defined 5 well-being actions for the team, which are very simple practices or behaviors, let's say, that we try to put in place when we meet each other, when we have smaller or even larger team meetings. And they are very simple. They are about listening, really listening, and not just looking at the screen, but listening with all senses. They are about reaching out and really meaning every letter when you ask, how are you? They are about moving and breathing. So sometimes when we have meetings now, we just dedicate 5 minutes in the beginning or also in the middle of a meeting to just stretch or have little fun games just to move and or also to breathe. We are smiling more, and we dedicate some time to laugh together, but also to suffer together sometimes when it's necessary, just to say things and to share that, and you don't feel so alone with the difficulties, right? And then we are practicing appreciation of people, of the projects we do, the good things that we're doing, but also the problems that we share. So that's our little team, let's say, team practice list, and it's working quite well. And then, of course, on the brand side, as I told you, we have not finished. We have in the team, in the sub teams, we have started to write manifestos, but we have not yet finalized one final brand manifesto, which I don't think should become a completely new thing for the brand, but I think it should integrate current manifestos with the well-being lens. And that could bring us also ideas for a new campaign or for new parts of the campaign. And we also have dedicated now a task force. So we are a big team and probably too big to have everyone working on everything. But we have now appointed a task force who will select the big list of ideas that have been generated during the journey, and to understand which of these ideas are really going to enter the innovation funnel in the larger sense. And so to understand which of them can really come to life from I would say 22 onwards, right, in a kind of roadmap. So next steps are quite intense too. We are also going to meet again in October to have another assessment after almost a year it will be, to see how actually these practices and the fact of having learned the framework and applied it at work, but also on the personal level, how this is actually changing things, and if people are really feeling a difference. In their personal feedback, there were two key words that came back all the time, and it was time and it was nature. Time to reflect, time to chat, time to get into contact, and then nature was overarching, probably because it's as you said, Renee, anyway so relevant at the moment, but nature is also a key value for the brand, so it's really double. It's 2 times more important. So that is about the next steps. That was it for the presentation. If you agree, I will just show you a last video, which is about the team. Some people of my team just wanted to share some impressions, and then we can leave some time for questions. Sharon, is that okay?
Perfect.
Give me a sign if you see the film.
Thanks to the Wellbeing program, I have learned that few daily actions can improve our personal and professional well-being, such as eating well, moving and breathing in the nature, sharing feelings and emotions with others. That's why I'm gonna have a walk in the nature.
The Mulino Bianco Wellbeing program was an amazing experience. I discovered all the complex world of the breath practices, and especially it helped me to reconnect with nature and an important part in our everyday life, especially in this time of problem of COVID time.
The Wellbeing course has been an authentic journey inside ourselves and with our teams. Personally, I've learned to listen deeply all the other people and to breathe in a proper way. That's something I want to keep always in my mind.
Mulino Bianco Wellbeing Mission.
Okay.
Super. Thank you so much, Diane, Renee, and Julia for sharing that video with the healthcare workers. It's so it's so emotional just thinking of Italy in that time. So yeah, bravo. Lots of commentary in the chat. Very powerful, and actually the link between self, team, and brand. Kimberly actually mentioned it in the chat. It is so powerful, and I haven't seen it in many occasions. So I think very, very interesting. So some quick questions. How many people was the Wellbeing journey available to from your employees? And then one that's kind of linked to it as well, which is interesting. What about the leadership at Barilla and people? Julia, Renee mentioned that you showed great personal commitment and leadership to this. How about your peers and other leaders and their reaction to this program? So maybe we'll go with those two first. And if you have questions, please do type away.
Yeah, the group was quite large because we were like 28 or 29, I think, Renee. So quite an important group, which was represented by my team, but we also had some special guests, let's call them like this. We had one person from Human Resources, our, let's say, direct point of reference, which I thought would be very important to have her with us, both because she's basically part of the team, and also to see and share what we were doing and to understand if this can become more relevant also for other teams. Regarding my peers, there are very few peers who had joined and participated in a pilot with Wisdom Works before our journey and who knew about the framework. But many of my direct peers in the region of Italy actually didn't really and don't yet really know. But I can't wait and see to share. Actually, we have founded a think tank within Barilla, which is starting next week, by the way, which is multifunctional and where we will discuss with some of my peers and colleagues, of course, this experience, but not only, because there are some parallel exercises in the company. For example, in Italy, independently from this journey, there has been kicked off a program which is called Wellbeing at Work, and which, for example, grants free access to employees to courses, online courses, yoga, postural, or also cooking courses. So there are, let's say, really feel there is a well-being momentum going on. And single initiatives are created and people proactively try to move them forward. But the think tank is really now has been created just to really to collect the experiences and to understand how on a more strategic level well-being can take place in the company on all levels. You know, I think it's not a question of HR. It's not a question just of brands. I think it's a question of the larger business strategy. If it's true that it's so important and it's so relevant for people, even beyond the pandemic, etc., then it should be like a lens that we learn to wear when we talk about business strategy.
Mm-hmm. I want to add to what you're saying, Julia, back to the first question, which is who was on the team, who was in this well-being journey. One thing that Julia did that I thought was brilliant is she invited, because they work so closely with a PR agency, she invited the agency. So again, another a partnership that is critical to the work of the brand, but not necessarily in the company, but it's very critical to the work. And so the PR agency was included in that group of people that was in the journey. And in the journey, because so much is happening that Julia mentioned, so many different discrete resources are available within Barilla to support employee mental health, well-being, etc. We made a list of those, and as was appropriate through the journey, we would reconnect employees with the resources they already had available. So when you think about most large organizations, often there's so many things already available, but employees either don't know about them, or they aren't thinking about them, or think about when we are most stressed. When we, like for instance, in our Be Relatable Pulse assessment, when we show up and all the scores show the high, sort of a very stressed out, we can actually see that. That's actually when most of us aren't thinking about the resources available to us, because internally we're feeling very contracted. And so we were connecting people back in to the resources that Barilla had available. And as Julia mentioned, there's a number of them.
And leading on to that, obviously trying to impact at scale, and in all the businesses listening today or in the future, one of the questions here: do you think this approach would work for the wider business? Do you think this could be the entire approach across Barilla for self, for team, and for your brands?
I think it can go broader. Of course, I don't think there is a copy and paste mechanism, because probably there was a reason that working on Mulino Bianco, I so quickly jumped on this idea, because I felt the brand so open to it and already prepared somehow, right? So and that might not be the case for every brand, but I do think that there is a way to deploy the framework also for people who don't work on brands, maybe with another angle, because in the end, the individual level and the team level is true for everyone. And then maybe the content of the job can define another way of, or other types of pilots to work on well-being. I don't know, I imagine completely different functions, I don't know, supply chain or whatever. I think there is a way to find the well-being sweet spots for every type of work, but probably we would need to slightly fine-tune the approach and the journeys. What remains stable is the framework, and is the fact that everything starts from yourself and from your relations to the others around you. That's for sure. And I think that HR, of course, should be really key in this. I mean, this cannot be done without HR.
Great, thank
Cannot
you.
be done just by HR. I don't believe in it if it just is generated there. But we need everyone together on the same boat.
I think it's so interesting, the innovation and creativity that that was spurred from this, in that kind of thinking within that framework. Another question that's come up here is, does your framework have anything to do with the Gallup Wellbeing Index?
Yes, in a way. So one of the core, as I mentioned in the framework, one of the core dimensions is thriving. That was the centerpiece of the framework, and all of the, if you think about the thriving being the centerpiece, the rest of the model, fuel, flow, wonder, wisdom, is you can think about it like flower petals. So these are flower petals opening up and giving more dimensionality to thriving. That core measurement, some of the core measurements, we've got 3 scales that look at thriving that combine together. One of those scales is the same as the thriving scale, 1 to 10 scale that Gallup uses. So and it's in the public domain. We were able to use it. Do we just request permission to use things, and we were able to do that. And so what's great about that is Gallup, there's such a powerful organization for big data, and big data particularly about thriving. And one of their latest points of research that just came out is that employees that are highly engaged, so think about this in the time of pandemic, employees that are highly engaged at work but not thriving in life overall are more prone to higher stress, higher worry, and higher burnout. And think about what we just talked about, all of us, head downs, I'm just going to get through this pandemic, I'm going to endure, so we're highly engaged, really doing our work, but not looking at the bigger picture of, your life overall also matters. So that we're actually creating a situation for more stress, worry, and burnout. So yes, our tool is using that piece of the Gallup Wellbeing Index.
Great, thank you. And I'm sure there's plenty more questions that would come. So please, we've come to the end of our time today, and I'm sure many companies are thinking how they could implement this. So if you want to follow up with Diane, Renee, or Julia, please do reach out to me at the Consumer Goods Forum, hw@theconsumergoodsforum.com. We'll follow up on any questions or comments as we're all we all navigate this global pandemic and this journey together. We're all interconnected across the globe. So huge thank you to Barilla and Wisdom Works. And yeah, Kimberly, I agree. What a great way to start or end the day. Thank you for the inspiration. And we look forward to connecting with you all again soon. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.